June 12th, 1962. Before sunrise, Alcatraz looked exactly as it had the night before. Rows of steel bars stretched endlessly through the darkness. Concrete walls held the night's cold. Dim lights reflected across silent corridors where nothing ever seemed to change. Beyond those walls, the waters of San Francisco Bay drifted beneath a blanket of morning fog. The city was close enough to see, close enough to remind every prisoner what freedom looked like, but far enough to feel impossible. Inside cell 138, Frank Morris appeared to be asleep. A blanket covered most of his body. His head rested naturally on the pillow. Just a few cells away, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin seemed to be sleeping too. Nothing looked unusual. Nothing suggested that anything had changed during the night. The guards had already passed these cells several times before sunrise. Each inspection revealed the same quiet scene. 3 prisoners, 3 beds, 3 sleeping men. Then came the morning count. One correctional officer stopped outside a cell and reached through the bars. He gently touched the prisoner's head. It shifted. For a brief second, nothing seemed wrong. Then the head rolled off the pillow. The face was painted. The hair was real, but the head wasn't. There was no prisoner beneath the blanket, only carefully arranged bedding designed to fool anyone looking through the bars. Within minutes, officers rushed to the neighboring cells. The result was even more shocking. Frank Morris was gone. John Anglin was gone. Clarence Anglin was gone. 3 prisoners had vanished from the most secure federal prison in America. The prison entered immediate lockdown. Guards searched every corridor, every workshop, every rooftop. Search boats surrounded the island. Aircraft scanned the bay from above. But the 3 men were nowhere to be found. Everything about the scene defied logic. The cell doors had never been opened. The steel bars remained untouched. No alarms had sounded. No guard had seen a thing. And yet, 3 men had disappeared from a prison built to make escape impossible. That morning, Alcatraz lost more than 3 prisoners. It lost its reputation. And the world was left with a mystery that remains unsolved to this day. For decades, Alcatraz was more than a prison. It was a warning, a place designed not simply to imprison men, but to convince them that escape was impossible. Sitting alone in the middle of San Francisco Bay, the island stood just over a mile from the mainland, close enough for prisoners to see the city, to watch its lights, to hear distant foghorns carried by the wind. Freedom was always visible, but it was never within reach. The waters surrounding Alcatraz were cold. Even during the summer months, temperatures could quickly drain the strength of an experienced swimmer. Powerful tidal currents swept unpredictably through the bay, capable of carrying a person far from shore within minutes. Contrary to popular belief, the greatest danger wasn't sharks. It was the water itself. Long before reaching the mainland, exhaustion and hypothermia could become deadly. But the bay was only the prison's final layer of security. Inside the cell house, nearly every movement followed a rigid routine. Cells were inspected. Head counts were constant. Guards knew exactly where every inmate was supposed to be. Doors opened only according to schedule. Lights followed the same rhythm every day. Nothing was left to chance. Nothing was supposed to be. The men sent to Alcatraz weren't ordinary criminals. They were the prisoners other prisons could no longer control. Bank robbers, escape artists, violent offenders. Men who had already proven they could defeat conventional prisons. If anyone attempted to escape Alcatraz, they weren't just escaping a building. They were challenging the most secure prison system America had ever built. And for nearly 30 years, no one had ever truly disappeared. Until one night, someone finally did. Every prison has inmates, but some prisoners become legends. Long before the escape made headlines around the world, 4 men had quietly begun sharing something more dangerous than a prison block. They shared the same belief that Alcatraz could be beaten. The man believed to be at the center of it all was Frank Lee Morris. Born in Washington, D.C. in 1926, Morris spent much of his life moving through orphanages, reform schools, and correctional institutions. By the time he reached adulthood, prison had become more familiar than freedom. But Morris wasn't known for violence. He was known for something far more difficult to contain: his mind. Prison officials frequently described him as exceptionally intelligent. Throughout his criminal career, he repeatedly escaped from custody, earning a reputation as one of the most resourceful inmates in the federal prison system. When conventional prisons failed to hold him, he was sent to Alcatraz. Just a few cells away were 2 brothers from Georgia, John and Clarence Anglin. Unlike Morris, the Anglins grew up in a large working-class family. They spent much of their childhood helping their parents harvest crops as seasonal workers across the United States. Life was simple, money was scarce, and hard work was part of everyday life. Whenever they weren't working, they were in the water. The brothers became strong swimmers after years spent in rivers and lakes, an experience that would later become one of the most discussed details of the entire escape. Eventually, both brothers turned to crime. A series of bank robberies led to their arrest and imprisonment. But even behind bars, they remained inseparable. Calm, patient, and remarkably disciplined. Then there was Alan West, another inmate housed near the others. West had also attempted escapes before arriving at Alcatraz. He shared their frustration. He shared their determination. And according to investigators, he became part of the plan from the very beginning. 4 men, 4 very different lives. Yet all of them had arrived at the same conclusion. If freedom was ever possible, it would have to begin inside the walls of Alcatraz itself. They didn't need stronger tools. They didn't need weapons. They needed something far more valuable. A weakness, one that no one else had ever noticed. Every prison has rules. Every prison has routines. But every prison also has imperfections. Most are insignificant. Some are dangerous. At first, Cell Block B looked no different from any other part of Alcatraz. Rows of identical cells, steel bars, concrete walls. Nothing seemed unusual, but hidden inside each cell was something almost every prisoner ignored. Beneath the small metal sink, there was a ventilation grill. Its purpose was simple: to allow air to circulate through a narrow utility corridor that ran behind the cells. For years, the constant moisture from the plumbing had slowly weakened the concrete surrounding those vents. It wasn't obvious. Not to the guards, not to the prison engineers, and certainly not to anyone walking past the cells. But someone living there every single day could notice the difference. Frank Morris did. At first, it was nothing more than curiosity. He tapped the concrete. It sounded hollow. He scratched its surface. Small pieces began to crumble away. The concrete wasn't as strong as it appeared. It was slowly deteriorating. That discovery changed everything. What had once looked like an ordinary wall suddenly became an opportunity. Night after night, working in complete silence, Morris began removing tiny fragments of concrete, just enough that no one would notice. Eventually, the Anglin brothers began doing exactly the same inside their own cells. Alan West joined them soon after. The work was painfully slow. A few minutes every evening, a handful of crumbling concrete. Then everything carefully hidden before the morning inspection. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Little by little, the opening behind each sink grew larger. For the first time, the impossible no longer seemed impossible, because beyond that wall, there was empty space. And empty space meant possibility. Finding the weakness was only the beginning. Now came the impossible part, turning a small opening in a concrete wall into a path to freedom. Every tool had to be built in secret. Nothing could be purchased. Nothing could be borrowed. Everything had to be created using whatever the prison unknowingly provided. Metal spoons became chisels. Small pieces of scrap metal became blades. Even ordinary objects found new purpose in the hands of men who refused to give up. Progress was painfully slow. Each night, only a few more pieces of concrete could be removed. Too much noise, and everything would be over. But Alcatraz itself offered an unexpected advantage. During the evening music hour, prisoners were allowed to play instruments inside the cell house. The sound echoed through the corridors. Accordions, guitars, voices. As music filled the prison, the scraping of metal against concrete disappeared into the background. Night after night, the opening grew larger. Eventually, the prisoners discovered an abandoned maintenance corridor hidden behind the cells. For the first time, they were standing somewhere the guards never expected an inmate to be. The corridor became their workshop. Hidden from sight, they began building the equipment they would one day trust with their lives. Using more than 50 stolen raincoats, they carefully stitched together a large inflatable raft. Every seam had to be waterproof. Every mistake could be fatal. They also built homemade life jackets, wooden paddles, ropes, everything by hand. Nothing could fail. Above them, another discovery changed the plan once again. By climbing through the maintenance corridor, they found a route leading toward the top of the cell house. One obstacle after another was slowly disappearing. Month after month, the escape stopped being an idea. It became a machine. Every piece carefully built, every movement carefully rehearsed, every risk carefully calculated. And somehow, no one noticed. Not the guards, not the prison administration, not even the inmates sleeping only a few feet away. After nearly 6 months of preparation, everything was finally ready. All that remained was to choose the night. June 11th, 1962. The day had unfolded like every other day inside Alcatraz. Breakfast, head counts, work assignments, evening meal. Nothing appeared unusual. Nothing suggested that history was only a few hours away. As darkness settled over San Francisco Bay, the prison slowly became quieter. Lights inside the cell house remained on. Guards continued their routine patrols. One final count confirmed that every prisoner appeared to be exactly where they were supposed to be. Inside their cells, The four men waited. There would be no second chance. Every movement had been rehearsed for months. Every sound mattered. Every second mattered. Late that night, Frank Morris quietly removed the paper cover hiding the opening beneath his sink. One by one, the men climbed through the holes they had spent months creating. Concrete dust still covered the floor. The cells looked untouched. From the outside, nothing seemed different. Beyond the walls, inside the hidden maintenance corridor, the real escape had finally begun. Silently, they crawled through the narrow passage between exposed pipes and steel beams. No voices, no flashlights, only darkness, only memory. Every turn had already been studied countless times. Above them, guards continued walking their normal patrol routes, completely unaware that 4 inmates were now moving freely behind the prison walls. Reaching the upper service level, they climbed toward the roof. The final barrier stood above them. A large ventilation fan blocked the exit. Months earlier, they had carefully loosened the bolts. Now, with nothing more than improvised tools, they removed the last obstacle. Cold night air rushed inside. For the first time in years, they were no longer inside Alcatraz. They were standing above it. Far below, the prison remained silent. No alarms, no shouting. No one had noticed. Not yet. One final climb remained, and beyond the roof, the darkness of San Francisco Bay was waiting. For Alan West, the escape was over before it truly began. Despite months of preparation, the opening behind his cell was still too small. He dug desperately at the remaining concrete, every second slipping away, every sound growing more dangerous. By the time he finally broke through, the others were gone. Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin would continue alone. Silently, the 3 men climbed down from the roof and crossed the prison grounds. The guard towers remained quiet. No alarms, no searchlights, no voices. At the northeastern shore of the island, they reached the final stage of their plan. Hidden among the rocks lay the equipment they had spent months building. The homemade raft, the life jackets, the wooden paddles. Working quickly, they inflated the raft using a small improvised bellows built from parts stolen inside the prison. The cold wind swept across the bay. The water below was black. The mainland seemed close enough to touch, but appearances had always been deceptive. Without speaking, the 3 men pushed the raft into the freezing water. They climbed aboard and began paddling into the darkness. Hours later, as the first light of morning reached Alcatraz, a correctional officer started the routine wake-up count. Everything seemed normal until he reached Frank Morris's cell. The figure beneath the blanket didn't move. The officer leaned closer. He reached out, touched the prisoner's head, and it rolled onto the floor. Within minutes, Alcatraz was in lockdown. Sirens echoed across the island. Armed guards searched every corridor. The Coast Guard launched boats into the bay. Helicopters circled overhead. The FBI joined one of the largest manhunts in American history. For days, search teams combed the freezing waters of San Francisco Bay. They recovered fragments of a homemade paddle, pieces of the inflatable raft, a waterproof bag containing personal belongings. But they never found Frank Morris. They never found John Anglin. They never found Clarence Anglin. No bodies, no confirmed sightings, no definitive evidence of what happened after they disappeared into the darkness. More than 60 years later, the question remains unanswered. Did 3 prisoners accomplish the impossible? Or did the waters surrounding Alcatraz claim them before they ever reached freedom? No one knows. Perhaps that is why the escape from Alcatraz continues to fascinate the world. Not because of what we know, but because of what we never will.